I think that Knicks fans kind of got a little taste of what things could look like where, Towns is pulling that rim protector out and is out there hitting dimes, and Jalen Brunson's off the ball and he's cutting around Towns. The ball is swinging around, and it's just beautiful basketball. And it's like you kind of get a little addiction to that because it looks so nice and it's so effective. And then you come into this series and Philly's like, Embiid's just going to be here. So what are you going to do? And it's like, well, I guess we got to go Brunson isolation ball.
I think we all need to agree that Towns can't just disappear. The Towns that we saw against Atlanta is too important to the Knicks. And so you can't look back on this series like, oh, well, there's the Karl-Anthony Towns that everybody laughs at for making $50 million. It needs to be priority A, even if the Sixers have a better countering strategy than the Hawks did. It needs to be priority A for the Knicks to say, how can we keep this version of Karl-Anthony Towns next to Jalen Brunson? Because that is a championship team.
This is Hot Hand Theory. This is a podcast where we talk about the NBA and break things down from an analytical perspective. I'm your co-host, XJ. As always, I'm joined by my brilliant co-host, Geoff. And Geoff, we have to talk about the huge second round matchup coming between the New York Knicks and the Philadelphia 76ers, a rematch of the 2024 first round series that got feisty, testy, physical, whatever you want to call it, dirty, as I'm sure Knicks fans will say. I can't wait for this one. I'm actually pleased that we got this matchup instead of the Celtics rematch of last year's Eastern Conference Finals. And Geoff, you and I are going to break down the nitty gritty of the series, all the stuff that you want to hear and all the stuff that you want to hear that you don't even know you want to hear. We're going to talk about it. But as customary here, I will let you, Geoff, do the honors to decide where we go first in breaking down this series. And I have a lot of thoughts, and they're coming up, but you do the honors.
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts too. This is kind of a full circle moment for High Hand Theory, which I feel like our core audience will recognize, because the 2024 offseason, we covered both the Paul George acquisition and the Karl-Anthony Towns acquisition. And I can't imagine there were many people higher on both than we were. Like, we were so psyched for both teams. Paul George was just this perfect additive piece between Maxey and Embiid. And then the Knicks, who have Brunson kind of being hounded against playoff defenses and teams can load up. Now they get this stretch center who's going to create all this space for him. And I mean, at the time, I don't want to speak for you, but I thought these were two of the higher ceiling, if not the two highest ceiling teams in the Eastern Conference, besides Boston, of course, at the time, who was coming off a championship. Don't want to be disrespectful to them. So I thought they were in any conversation for high ceiling. For the Sixers, things didn't necessarily go as plans, injuries, a bunch of stuff. So this has got to be exciting for their fan base. And then for the Knicks, coming off an Eastern Conference Finals berth, and yeah, they're back to it, coming off Game 6 against Atlanta, which is insane. I think where I want to start with this, actually, is this is really, really cool to analyze, because you really just have to throw the data out. Like, from an analysis standpoint, at least from Philly's perspective, I was trying to research this episode when as it winded down, and we knew this is where we were going in terms of who we were going to cover for this series. And I was like, man, none of this matters. Like, Philly wasn't this team throughout the entire season. This is just, it's like, where do you even start with this team? And you watch that Game 7 against Boston, Nick Nurse has apparently decided that there are like 6.5 players he trusts. And I was doing the math in my I was doing the math in my head, and I was like, okay, well, there's 4 positions, 1 through 4. So that's 192 minutes. He trusts 5 guys to play those 4 positions. I guess if they all just play like 40 minutes a game, he can pull it off. And that's what he did in this Game 7. And so I think that's the biggest gap between these two teams, is the depth. Like, you love the Knicks depth. You love all the different ways they can play. We've talked about it all season long when we talk about the Knicks. Is just, this is a team that can be good in so many different ways. Compared to Philly, they can be good in one very specific way with these like 6 guys. But I don't even know if you can say the depth is an advantage for the Knicks, because Philly doesn't care about their depth. They're just going to play with 6 people. So I guess where I'm going with this is the Knicks are in for a very, very peculiar matchup, because truthfully, it's going to take them a game or two to sort of figure out what they're going to get from this Philadelphia team.
Yeah, I think that's a great introduction. And I think that the matchup has so many interesting wrinkles in it. And as far as like, I want to think about, I mean, I love the point about the kind of minutes load that Nurse has on these guys. And I like to call Nick Nurse the last Tibbs. And so I think that Knicks fans will be interested to see if Tibbs was coaching against New York, how it would go. I think that's how this series is going to go. Except that Nick Nurse has done some good things. And when I call him the last Tibbs, I want to say it's really based on like some of the offense that they run in Philly. Yeah, what's up?
I was just saying, Tibbs did some good things. Tibbs did a lot of good things. Like, you believe that too.
Oh yeah, of course.
I feel like people were gonna misconstrue that. Like, oh, I don't want to say he's the last Tibbs because Nurse actually does some good things. I know you don't actually feel that.
That's a good point.
I don't want our audience to feel that you feel that.
That's a very good point. But I am notably lower on Tibbs than most people, I think, as an overall coach, not just like in terms of like capping the ceiling of the Knicks, but as an overall coach, I think I'm much lower on him than most other people. But I don't think he's like a bad coach and didn't do anything well. So that's a great point. But I think for Nurse, it really is about the fact that offensively, it's a lot of mismatch hunting. It's a lot of isolation basketball. It's a lot of go to my best players and let them figure something out. And that's where we're going to see a ton from the Sixers. Defensively, though, again, like Tibbs, he actually does a lot of interesting things. He will figure out a way to make your best players struggle to be their best version of themselves. He's more than happy to kind of give up open shots depending on who it is and in what circumstances they are. And that is something that is going to be difficult for the Knicks to deal with because they have, the Josh Hart situation that we've talked about all season long. And Hart has shot, I forget what he shot, over 40% from three this season. But then we come into the Hawks series and he is not shooting over 40% from three. He did not shoot for over 40% from three. He shot 5 of 23 from three, 2 of 15 on open and wide open threes, and 0 of 7 on wide open threes in this series. So pretty much as bad as you can shoot. And Atlanta never tried to ghost coverage him at a single time in this series, which is absolutely preposterous. By the way, this is a tangent, but totally relevant to what we're talking about. And I want to get your reaction to this because the Knicks, we just saw them utterly dominate the Hawks. The Hawks scraped by and got 2 wins by 1 point each, and really honestly should have probably only won one of those games. And so they utterly dominated the Hawks. We saw Philly go 7 games. Embiid was out and then he was in, and then they played a lot better. But I think that for the Knicks, the Hawks facilitated the way that the Knicks were able to play more than we'll ever see the rest of, any series that they play moving forward in the playoffs, as long as they're in the playoffs. And maybe even for the rest of the time that this Knicks core is together, even if they stick together for another season. And I think that we're going to look back at this Knicks versus Hawks series and say, yeah, the Knicks played to their potential. They showed what it looked like when they have all systems going and guys are playing in their appropriate roles and are deployed in the right way. But I think we're going to look back and have a new appreciation for how bad Quinn Snyder was in this series from a strategic perspective. He simply allowed the Knicks to play exactly how they wanted to play. Like to an unbelievable level. Pull the rim protector away, or the token rim protector, because the Hawks don't have a ton of like real rim protectors. Pull them away from the rim. Allow the Knicks to run all of these fun off-ball screening actions, and let's do flex screens. It'll be cute, and like we'll get guys cut into the basket or run to the basket with momentum and space and all of that stuff. And the Hawks gave up, Geoff, the highest frequency of shots at the rim in the entire playoff so far. And there's not a close second. The Knicks took nearly 43% of their shots at the rim. In the regular season, the Knicks took 31% of their shots at the rim, which was 15th in the NBA. This is over a 36% increase. That is absolutely outrageous to have that kind of increase. And make no mistake about it, this could not have happened. The domination that the Knicks put on and the amazing performance coaching wise that Mike Brown put on could not have happened without the Hawks being complicit in it. At no point did they decide to switch things up. At no point did they decide, let's get desperate and try maybe to let guys be open, especially Josh Hart, who is shooting putridly from the series. This will not happen in any other series. I think this was as bad a strategic job in coaching from Snyder, like almost in an all-time way, personally, in my perspective, in a playoff series. Nick Nurse will not do that. He will be open to, I know the Knicks fans are going to say, well, hunt Embiid, put him in every action. We're going to see Embiid play at the level or in a deep drop, and they're going to let Oubre and Quentin Grimes and Paul George fight over screens, side contest, rear contest, and they're going to let the Knicks beat them from three if they're going to beat them in that way. And they're also going to ghost coverage Josh Hart, and they're going to say, if you're going to beat us shooting threes, Josh Hart, beat us shooting threes. And that is going to pose a completely different challenge for the Knicks than they saw against the Atlanta Hawks, which I think, obviously, again, the Knicks played to their potential, who I think they're the most talented team in the Eastern Conference. But it was totally facilitated and complied with by Quinn Snyder, in my opinion.
Yeah, Brown showed some very promising things. But one thing that wasn't new, and it was a little bit surprising that so many acted like it was new, is how dominant the Knicks were against a team guarding them mostly traditionally. We have 2 years of evidence of that. Like, there was no... Like, you brought up Josh Hart's direct output in terms of his shooting. He was still, as you know, one of the 4 most valuable Knicks in that series, in a series that he was 5 of 23 from three. Against a playoff defense, that should be impossible. That should be every single opponent should be looking. That should be one. They don't have that many areas to exploit. When you're an underdog and you're looking for areas of weakness to attack, the book should be out. That it's been out since halfway through the first season of Karl-Anthony Towns on the Knicks. And still, the Hawks did that for 6 games. And credit to Mike Brown, credit to Josh Hart, credit to all of them. They were amazing. Even, do you know how good a basketball player you have to be? Even in, I mean, we can say like, oh, the Hawks didn't guard them optimally. You're in a playoff series, you're facing a playoff team, and you have an amazing series like Josh Hart did despite making nothing from three. Like, you have to be good at a lot of different things. So credit to him. It's not like you can't just take that away from him. And I'm not saying you were. I'm just saying if anybody wanted to. No, that's not where we're going with this. Bringing this to Philadelphia, how much credit do you give to Nurse in terms of the ghost coverage thing? Like, to me, it's always felt more like a matter of circumstance because they don't want Embiid on Towns. And they're just like, okay, well, where are we going to put Embiid? We're not going to put him on McCall. He runs some offense. We're not going to put him on OG. I guess it's just kind of convenient to, when Hart's over there in the corner, we'll just put him on Hart. And hey, that by circumstance just keeps him in the paint. So that's good. Look, whatever Nurse's motivations are, he's going to do it. And I love that you brought up Grimes and Oubre, because one thing that Kelly Oubre and Quentin Grimes both do exceptionally well in slightly different ways is make it tough on guys trying to shoot pull-up threes when Embiid isn't dropped. They're both really, really good at that in different ways. Grimes, as Knicks fans are very familiar, incredible screen navigator. Kelly Oubre is a little bit different. I don't know, but he's more of like shifty, and like he more is just like he uses his length to contest going around the screen. It's very strange to watch, but he's actually sneakily very effective at it. So you have those two things, and yeah, we're gonna see Embiid and drop. And to me, this comes back to with Towns. Can the Knicks still find a way to have Towns? Because that's the solution, right? I mean, 2 years now we've been talking about this whenever we talk about the Knicks. Their solution when teams ghost Hart isn't to say, how can we keep Towns involved? It's okay, we're going to have Hart as the screener. That's great. They've decided, they've weighed the trade-offs. They think that that's the best answer. They have the best information, we hope. Okay, I think we all need to agree that Towns can't just disappear. The Towns that we saw against Atlanta is too important to the Knicks. And so you can't look back on this series like, oh, well, there's the Karl-Anthony Towns that everybody laughs at for making $50 million. It needs to be priority A, even if the Sixers have a better countering strategy than the Hawks did. It needs to be priority A for the Knicks to say, how can we keep this version of Karl-Anthony Towns next to Jalen Brunson? Because that is a championship team.
Yeah, it has to be priority A for them, and it's yet to be seen if it will because they haven't been tested in that way. And so that's why I'm really excited about the series from a Knicks perspective. To be honest, like I'm excited to see what happens when they're tested in this way. Does Josh Hart shoot the ball? Is he aggressive from three? Does he shoot like he shot in the regular season with confidence and shoots Nick Nurse out of this kind of coverage? Because he did before. He did in 2024. He literally shot Nick Nurse out of this coverage, which was crazy to me. I'm like, if you're playing this coverage, you can't go away from it because the guy made shots. Like that's not that undermines the purpose and the value of the coverage to do that. But he did.
It's like, actually, it's like if you had a friend who was like, yo, I'm feeling really, really good about heads. I'll give you 2-1 on a coin flip. And then heads won the first two. And you're like, oh shit, man, he was right. Heads is high. Like, you can't just stop betting because you lost the first two flips. You just keep flipping that coin, Nick.
It's a great analogy. Actually, it's totally apropos, and I appreciate it because it elucidates how insane it is to say the guy's making shots. Let me just stop. It's like, well, the whole point is over enough shots, he's gonna balance out to not make shots. You don't just switch it after he's made shots. It's bizarre, but this could be different because Josh Hart shot 40% from three this season, and it could be the case that he just makes shots for the entire season, and that's how good a shooter he is. It will be interesting to see if he does, if he's aggressive, and if he's not and is not making shots. If Mike Brown goes to other options, it says we're going to play more shooting around Brunson Towns, and we're going to play Josh Hart in bigger rebounding lineups with Mitchell Robinson, where that kind of coverage is not going to affect them as much. Or maybe Josh Hart, as Gavin and I had talked about on Locked On Knicks, maybe Josh Hart and Karl-Anthony Towns together more often and run the offense through Josh Hart in those situations where he can run pick and roll with Towns, or they can run inverted screening actions with Towns and Hart, where Jalen Brunson out of the lineup, where you're not lowering the ceiling of your lineup artificially by pulling Jalen Brunson out of actions.
Why don't they do that? I mean, so all right, I'm just gonna on the fly pitch something to you. So right now the Knicks general rotation is Towns comes out midway through the first and McCall comes out early, and Deuce and Mitch are the main subs for those two. Brunson and Hart, and Hart mostly finishes the quarter. Sometimes he'll come out near the end of the first. Brunson and OG finish the quarter, and then they do sort of a McCall, OG, Hart sort of trio swap for the next. But why don't the Knicks just have it be Hart that comes out instead of McCall? So then you get the starting lineup with Deuce. So you get a couple minutes of that, and then Mitch comes in for Towns. And then at the start of the second quarter, you have Hart, Deuce, Hart, Deuce, Towns, one of the wings, McCall or OG, and then whoever the other backup guard / wing is. So Shamet or Alvarado or Clarkson, whoever is Mike Brown's feeling. And then you just run the offense through Hart. So it's Hart plus 4 shooters with really good defense. And what is if the opposing strategy is we're going to ghost Hart, you're just directly punishing from that. You're sort of maximizing Hart, and you're finding a way to create potentially the best offensive option the Knicks have when Jalen Brunson isn't on the court, which we know historically has been a problem for them.
It's a good question. I mean, my only rebuttal to that would be the opportunity cost of not allowing Towns to play in these Towns plus 4 shooters lineups that just tend to absolutely dominate. And that's the only problem. But obviously you'd be offsetting that a little bit by having Towns play plus 4 shooters, like when Jalen Brunson is one of those shooters. So that would help mitigate that to some extent. But yeah, that would be the only thing I could think of. And to be honest, I don't think Brown is thinking that way. So I don't think that's why he's doing it, or not doing it for that matter. So yeah, I imagine there are things that they can go to. And like even that one that we mentioned, and actually I just want to make sure, shout out to Gavin because it was mostly his idea coming up with that. So there are things that they can do to mitigate ghost screening in terms of deployment and combinations, and Josh Hart obviously shooting is the number one, and making sure they get in transition when Hart is on the court, maybe playing him and Alvarado together, and Mikal Bridges, guys who just want to fly up and down the court and get into early actions and get to the rim. And so there are a lot of things that they can do, and I'm just really excited to see if Mike Brown goes in these directions and then what Nick Nurse does in response to that, because I do think Nurse is going to come out with this as the base coverage for them, unless he like looks at the stat sheet and says, "Oh, Josh Hart shot 40% this season. That's just like Royce O'Neal. No way I could ghost them unless he does that, which I don't think he will." And I do think Nurse I hear what you're saying about like, circumstantially he has Embiid and it's like, well, I'm not going to have Embiid running around on the perimeter. So how can I figure out how to keep him close to the rim? But I do think Nurse has sort of a history of running these kind of like junky, creative defensive schemes, defensively and being willing to go in that kind of weird direction, like some stuff he did against Curry in the finals in 2019 when he was with the Raptors, playing that box and one kind of thing. Like I think he's willing to go to like weird defensive lineup constructions and strategies and tactics. And so I do think that is sort of like, to me, that's like his best attribute, I would say personally.
He also has them. I noticed this in the Boston Game 7 game. They're really good at scramming, like really good, because Boston kept trying to like mismatch hunt in the post with Jalen Brown and stuff. And Embiid kept tagging guys out. Like Embiid was really on the ball. I think this was genuinely one of the best defensive games I've seen Embiid play in a long time. Like there was a possession where he got switched onto Peyton Pritchard and he was like running circles with him. And can Embiid do that for 6-7 games against the Knicks with Jalen Brunson? Maybe not, but this is, if Embiid's bringing a modicum of defensive intensity that like we saw against the Celtics in Game 7, and they have Oubre and Grimes and Paul George, Edgecombe's no slouch defensively, of course, like that leaves Maxey. And if you combine that with good defensive strategy, like the best possible one against the Knicks, you have the individual defenders to guard in isolation who will fight over screens. This puts a lot of pressure on what can you do against Maxey and can you get Embiid in space? Like those are going to be the Knicks' best forms of offense, which the ceiling gets a lot lower than the team that just scored 137,000 points against Atlanta in Game 6.
Yeah, it's a great point. I totally agree with that. It'll definitely be interesting to see what they do in that kind of situation, because I know, and the big conversation point is going to be like, just get Embiid in space, bring Embiid into every action, bring him up high. And it's like, we've seen teams start to play this way, like more than ever, in my opinion, this season. I don't know, like you have better historical context than I do by like a long shot. But as far as like, I don't remember seeing so many teams playing in this deep drop where they just have basically the perimeter defender playing 1-on-2 and just chasing over screens. And it's like, yeah, you could, you can do the Draymond Green thing where you're like doing dribble handoffs or you're screening for Curry. And it's like, oh man, it's 1-on-2. It's like, teams like the Portland Trail Blazers will just have Clingan and Robert Williams III in a deep drop, and they'll just say, Kamara, just run through screens all day. Like, just get through them. Don't let the guys shoot an uncontested three. And we even see on the other end of that same series that we just saw, the Spurs will do the same thing with Wemby. They'll just have Wemby in a deep drop, and they'll say, yeah, Castle, just run through screens and figure it out. Just don't let the guy get open threes. And we see that happen with Philadelphia. So it'll be really interesting to see, like, can you really get Embiid involved in space consistently? Because the Celtics just tried to do that and did not have a good time doing it early in this Game 7. I think the first 3 possessions were trying to get Embiid involved in the action, and he was just in a deep drop, and Derek White missed a 3 and Jalen Brown missed a 3. And it was just like, and we hear the broadcaster saying, well, yeah, I don't really like when they take these threes that are just off the dribble pull-up threes. It's like they got to touch paint and then spray it out for 3. And it's like, well, that's what the Sixers are giving them. And it's like, are you going to live on a diet of that? Is that the way you're going to run it? Where it's just like, hey, have Josh Hart screen for Jalen Brunson and he'll just shoot 15 pull-up threes in this game with like decent to high level side and rear contesting. We didn't even mention Edgecombe, who I think is also really good at navigating screens and contesting. He's sort of like a hybrid between Oubre and Quentin Grimes. So I that'll be so interesting to me from that standpoint.
I don't even know if the Knicks want to do that. Like we've been talking about this iteration of the team for obviously 2 years now, and the theoretical upside being like, oh, they can space everyone out and they have all these good shooters, and you've brought to light the Towns thing. Like, Towns is this great big man shooter, but does he even want to be a great big man shooter? He seems hesitant to shoot a lot of threes. But then you talk about Brunson, OG Anunoby, amazing first round against Atlanta, who will shoot a lot of threes. But I think you give him truth serum. That guy wants to get to the rim. He wants to get into the paint. He loves having the ball into his hands, and he loves bullying people on the low block, and that two-handed dunk, playing off 2 feet, XJ, as we all know, is super important. I don't know if the Knicks are the type of team to say, well, Embiid's in deep drop, we're just going to take 63s tonight because he is facilitating Jalen Brunson. I don't know if Jalen Brunson is the guy to say, I'm going to take 14 pull-up, is he going to do that? And then you have to ask the follow-up question. If they aren't willing to do that, if they aren't trying, if the threes are more about the threat and more about, these are the things that are helping us get to the shots that we want to take inside the paint, and the Sixers are saying, we're just going to have Embiid camp out here and good luck. Like, we're not going to let you get inside 10 feet as much. How do the Knicks respond? It's a great question.
It'll be so interesting, and it could result in a lower scoring series, in my opinion, depending on how they respond. Like you said, I think that we could see more mid-range shots from Brunson. We could see more Brunson isolation play that we saw, and Knicks fans are not going to be happy about that, I can tell you, because I think that Knicks fans kind of got a little taste of what things could look like that we've talked about for a couple years, where, Towns is pulling that rim protector out and is out there hitting dimes, and Jalen Brunson's off the ball and he's cutting around Towns, curling back to the play, and then he gets the ball with a head of steam going to the rim, and he gets layups, and the ball is swinging around, and it's just beautiful basketball. And it's like, man, like, you kind of get a little addiction to that because it looks so nice and it's so effective. And then you come into this series and Philly's like, Embiid's just going to be here, so what are you going to do? And it's like, well, I guess we got to go Brunson isolation ball. And to be honest with you, sometimes it is just what the defense is giving you. And that's why you have that option, that nuclear option in Jalen Brunson, and say, man, if you're not going to give us anything and you're just going to make us beat you this way, we have one of the few guys in the league who can do that consistently enough to win a game or to win a game or two. And so that's the beauty and the luxury of having Jalen Brunson. But he has to be on top of his game. He has to be making shots. He has to be able to be comfortable getting to his spots, and do that against Kelly Oubre, Paul George, Quentin Grimes, and VJ Edgecombe. And that's going to be that's a tough gauntlet of guys to do it against consistently.
It's super tough. I was thinking about it as you were talking about this. You know how sometimes we joke about how, like, when Hart gets a swing and the defense rotates onto him, like, he gets like an extra pep in his step. He's super pumped to just make that swing pass when he's like, oh yeah, shit, yeah, I got to make the swing, as opposed to those teams who fake the step and then leave Hart open. Mike Brown kind of got his version of that in the Atlanta series. Like he drew up that set where Brunson's screening for OG off ball and Towns is hitting him on the back cut, and Atlanta just didn't counter it. And he's like, oh shit, yeah, this works. I can just do this all the time. Like, yeah. You think Philly's gonna watch Brunson screen for OG and just be like, well, I guess we got to give up the dunk, Like, what? I don't think that's. They
didn't even try to switch it, and it's like, well, man, we don't want a Kongu stuck on Brunson. It's like, oh, well, then you'd rather just give up a dunk to OG 6 times? It's like, what?
This is crazy. That was wild to watch. It's a cool play, but I mean, it's a little bit harder if you do have the guy with 1 foot on the line waiting to help. Like, to bring it back to the conversation about this series, there are a couple of things I'm worried about on the other side of the ball. If it's cool to move on to that. And
that's where I was going to go next. Lead us.
It involves the Knicks' 2 best players. So we'll start with Brunson. I don't know where like when Grimes is on the court, I think the Knicks will live with Brunson on Grimes, and I think they'd be smart too. I love Quentin Grimes, but if you're devolving your offense to let's put the ball in Grimes' hands more because he can cook Brunson, I think you're hurting your team offense a little bit more. That's not really Grimes is what makes Grimes a good basketball player. Similarly, we saw the Knicks try to do that with Deuce McBride in games 1 and 2 against the Hawks, where they were like, we're going to sit Brunson and Towns and we're going to put the ball in Deuce McBride's hands. And that didn't go well. And it's like, yeah, that's not what he does super well. That you shouldn't do that. But I do think specifically against the Sixers starting lineup, which feels ironic to say because I don't think it's the Sixers' best lineup, but against the Knicks, I think it actually might be a more effective lineup, specifically because there is nowhere for Brunson to hide. Like if I was Mike Brown, forget obviously Paul George and Maxey and Embiid, take them out of the picture. I do think that there are things that both Edgecombe and Oubre can do to hurt the Knicks with Brunson on them in a way where the Sixers wouldn't be wrong for amplifying their role, at least later in the shot clock, if their first action gets bogged down. That kind of worries. That would be kind of worrying to me as from a Knicks fan perspective or just from the Knicks perspective. And then the second thing is, are you going to put Towns on Embiid? Because as underrated defensively as I think Towns is, which I do think he's been generally underrated, I think the whole you can't win with Brunson and Towns as your two best players thing sort of unfairly implies that they're a similar level of defender, which they aren't. I'm not saying Towns is an all NBA level defender, but I don't think he's as bad as, one of the worst guard defenders in the league. But his weakness, there are two things. One, quick guards when he's in drop coverage, which Tyrese Maxey roasts. Number two, foul trouble, which if you put him on Embiid, he will get into foul trouble. This could be an absolute nightmare defensively for Karl-Anthony Towns. And when you're talking about Philadelphia and you're looking at the way they run offense, I think in a complete vacuum, you're looking at a team that isn't something to get super excited about. I don't think that Nick Nurse offensively does maximize this roster of players, but guess what? In this matchup specifically, the way they play offense might actually be the way to hurt the Knicks defense the most, which is feels very strange to say, but I do think the Knicks have some things to be worried about on that side of the ball.
Yeah, I think those are great points. I will start with the thing I slightly disagree with. I'm less concerned about Brunson guarding, Oubre and Edgecombe. I think if the Sixers are like, let's feature Oubre, whatever. It's like, okay, like you can do that and good luck. Obviously Oubre is a competent scorer. He's big. He's super athletic, rangy. He can draw fouls on Brunson. He can get to the bucket against him, has a quickness advantage, all that stuff. But I just don't think you're leveraging your best skills if you're basically featuring Oubre and who was on the sidelines watching is Embiid and Maxey and Paul George. I'd be fine with that from the Knicks perspective. The Towns issue, I think, is, and you hit it spot on. I think it's a dilemma defensively because, to your point, Towns and drop. You have to deal with Maxey and those decisions that you have to make that Towns struggles to make quickly. They're even quicker that he has to make them now. He has to decide, are you dropping back? Are you pushing up? Are you defending the floater? Are you defending the lob? How high do you need to be on these screens? They're going to put Towns in a world of decisions that he has to make in a very quick, rapid succession, possession after possession. And it's not going to look like the Hawks series if he's in drop every single time. That's why, to me, I think we're going to expect a slightly different series with respect to. I don't think Towns is going to be on Embiid. I think he'll be on Embiid, but not as much as we might think. I think OG is going to take on the Embiid matchup, and I think it actually makes more sense now than ever because Embiid is so perimeter bound and takes a million mid-range jumpers, and he always has, but now even more so than ever. So I think we'll see a lot of OG. I think it's a very important series for Mitchell Robinson. And, that's a grudge match that Mitch has been waiting a while for. So that'll be really interesting from that standpoint. And I even think, because I think the Knicks are in this situation where they will need a third center, and based on the foul situation that you mentioned. And this is something that you and I have kind of talked about all season, about the Knicks not having a third realistic center to put out there. And so that is going to be a question, I think, in at least a game or two. Towns has several fouls. Mitchell Robinson has played a lot. What do they go to as far as who is going to guard Embiid? Is it just going to be OG? They're not going to go no center. That'll be a really interesting situation. But the foul trouble is something to watch out for. And I'm going to let you kind of take it from there, but I do have a rant about the foul stuff because like I got to get this off my chest about what we're going to see as far as fouling and like the narrative that's going to follow afterwards, because this is just an accident waiting to happen. But yeah, I'll let you take it from there before I say what I was going to say.
You think that anybody who's listening to this video 32 minutes in cares an XJ rant is incoming? Please, dude, take it away. I think everybody, I don't even know what you're going to say. Go for it.
Well, people are not going to like this rant. People would like if I was ranting in favor of, if they're a Sixers fan in favor of the Sixers, if they're a Knicks fan in favor of the Knicks. This is not really in favor of anyone, and this is a ubiquitously like going to be despised take that I give. So that's the precursor to it. But I like, I know I'm on an island here, like I am saying, but I just think that I hate the foul baiting conversations. Like I think that foul baiting, which is literally just intentionally trying to draw fouls, is just a game strategy. Like it's just a game strategy. Like you should do it because we can not like it aesthetically. I know people don't like it aesthetically, and that makes total sense. I have no issue with that. But we all know that getting to the free throw line is one of the most efficient things you can do in the game of basketball. Like strategically, if you can get to the free throw line a lot, you are putting your team at a huge advantage in winning the game. And so I think that it's so bizarre to me that people suggest that you should only get to the free throw line incidentally. Like this idea of like ethical basketball. Like, well, you're not trying to draw fouls. Like I'm just trying to do my thing, but I'm so good that you can't stop me. And so then you foul me. Like that's how you play. That's how you play the game. It doesn't make sense. It only makes sense to say, this is the most efficient way you can play. Let me try to do that thing. It would be like saying, well, you can only hit home runs. You got to just try to put the ball in play and hit line drives. And if you incidentally hit it over the fence, then that's a great play. Then that was cool that you did that. But if you intentionally like try to increase your swing speed and your launch angle and you try to hit home runs, that's lame, dude. Like, don't do that. It's like, no, that's a valuable thing that I'm trying to do. It makes sense for me to do that on purpose. Like, why would I not do that thing on purpose? Of course, there's like aesthetically, it doesn't look great. And there's even situations where it's a negative. We've seen situations like Embiid is foul baiting instead of making a layup, he's like looking for a foul, and like, or Trae Young has done that in situations where he's like looking for a foul. It's like, dude, you had an open shot, you could have just taken that shot. But so it has some negative consequences, but the net benefit is very obviously positive if you're good at it. And if I was a fan of a team and I'm a fan of a team and my player is like literally like studying all offseason, how do I draw more fouls? What can I do? What are all like racking his brain, working with coaches, working with referees like James Harden does in the offseason? What's a foul? How do I draw a foul? If I do this, is that a foul? If I like doing that just makes sense and makes your team better and makes it more likely for you to win. And if I care about winning only, then that's what I want to see happen. So like the whole conversation that's going to happen in this about Embiid's trying to draw fouls and blah, 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 whatever. I know everybody's going to hate this. Trust me, across the board. But like, that is truly how I feel about it. You should be trying to draw fouls. And if we hate it, it's about stop telling the NBA to change the rules, not about telling the players to stop doing something that's super highly effective and makes their team have a much better chance of winning.
Well, I think the last thing you said is maybe the part in your analysis that's missing. And so what I mean by that is, and I want to add this real quick, the funniest thing about the conversation that's going to come into this series is it's Joel Embiid versus Jalen Brunson. Like, you can't, it's the Spider-Man meme. I don't understand how this is such a talking point in the series where you have Philadelphia 76ers fans being like, oh my God, Jalen Brunson is so unbearable to watch. And it's like, dude, Joel Embiid is on you can't like it when it's on your team and then not like that. And it works both ways. You know, like when Embiid does the swipe thing or he holds his arm out in front of him, it's like, how many and ones have Knicks fans seen Jalen Brunson get that are the super soft and ones, but Jalen Brunson craftily holds his arms out for a second and then gets the and one, you know, works both ways. But back to the thrust of your point. I don't know. I'm sure the aesthetic bias has something to do with it. Like, oh, I just don't like watching it. I think what subconsciously frustrates people the most is they know that there's no objectivity to it. It is a completely subjective standard. And to watch certain people get rewarded for something they see other people not get rewarded for is what frustrates them. That's why it extrapolates the unwatchableness, or how much they don't like it, how much it bothers them. And then to take it a step further, which is why this specific team is always in the conversation, the Oklahoma City Thunder, when you have a team like the Oklahoma City Thunder who deploys the craftiest foul drawer in the NBA, which we can break down 90%, 95% of the fouls SGA draws and be like, yes, that is technically a foul. And then to look on the other side of the court and you have Lou Dort and Alex Caruso allowed to defend a completely different way, which it is not an objective rule set. It is completely subjective based on reputation and based on, oh, well, this guy's a good defender. He's not fouling. Like these refs are human. I'm not saying these refs are rigging the games. I'm saying they're human beings and they have preconceived notions and biases. That is where the frustration as a fan lies. It isn't even so much about, oh, I don't like watching Joel Embiid play basketball. I know there is some of that, but I think if you're a Toronto Raptors fan or something, and you're watching a Sixers Raptors game and Joel Embiid goes to the free throw line 14 times, and then Scotty Barnes maybe doesn't get the same standard of whistle, that discrepancy or differential in how the game is called for certain players is where the frustration lies, especially when the league came out however many years ago, the year after the Trae Young playoff run, and said, we're done with this. If it's a natural shooting motion where you have to be actually trying, at least somewhat doing something that you wouldn't be doing if the defender was there. And then even more so, that doesn't exist except for a certain, subset, a class of player per se. That only widens the divide between the players. It gives the substars an even smaller chance of reaching that level. So I do think there is some rational level to the frustration from a fan's perspective.
I totally disagree. And I would love to hear our commenters, our listeners' opinions, by the way, too, because we have obviously some of the most objective, thoughtful, insightful people who listen to our show. And I respect your opinions. Obviously, I respect Geoff's opinion. And so I would love to hear your thoughts, but I totally disagree, because here's what I think. I think that there is not a human being alive who can confidently point to like objective discrepancies or disparities or whatever you want to call it between teams or players that in the way that they're like refereed or anything like that. There is not a human being alive who can confidently point to those things being like systemic or consistent, or to the point where there is actually, you can say, well, this guy is refereed this way and everyone else is refereed this way, or my star is refereed this way and this star is refereed the other way. There's nothing there's no one who can do it, because there's not a strong correlation between any data and like foul drawing. Like people always talk about, well, this guy drives a lot. There's no correlation. There's no strong correlation between drives and foul drawing or any benchmark that you can point to. Nobody, absolutely nobody. And it's not reasonable or feasible to do this. Nobody's watching a game and rewatching it and looking at every single call or every single non-call that should have happened or call that shouldn't have happened on both sides and saying, yes, I did a tally mark, and for 82 games, SGA has more of these than anybody else, and Lou Dort and Caruso have less of these than anybody. Nobody's doing that. So it's all eye test. It's like the things that we see clips of over and over again. It's people watching games and just saying like, I felt like Lou Dort got away with a lot there, or I felt like SGA just got all to the line all the time. It's like, maybe it was deserving. Maybe it was, and maybe it balances out. Maybe one game he did get to the line more than he should have, and maybe another game he got to the line less than he should have. Nobody's doing this analysis. And until AI is able to actually do it, where there's like tracking and there's very like detailed analysis in this way, nobody's able to do it. And so it is, at the end of the day, it is how people feel. They watch the game and they feel a certain way about the fouls and the way that the game is being refereed, but no one knows. There is not a human being alive who knows this in any way objectively. And just like you're talking about, there's subjectivity for the referees. That subjectivity could easily balance out unless someone is able to prove this like consistent disparity, then it's just people saying how they feel about it based on clips and watching games and eye tests and all of those things, which is totally unreliable, as we all know. So I don't agree with that. I think that that's actually maybe even more frustrating to me from the standpoint than people just like not liking foul baiting, but it's that people feeling like they know who's getting the whistle on their side and who's not, because nobody does.
Yeah, I don't think what you just said there it mutually excludes what my point was. Now, you can not like it similarly, but to be clear, I wasn't saying that people were right. I was just saying that it was about more than the aesthetic. I do think that what I was saying is the driving, motivating factor behind why people get so loud and frustrated about it. It's not the aesthetic, or not as much the aesthetic. I truly do think that they think that there's like a differentiating standards for different players, and that's what drives the frustration.
That's fair. Yeah, I think that, again, to clarify, you said you think that there's differentiating standards for different players, but it's the perception of that difference.
Yes, they don't know. I was just trying to explain why they feel the way they do, and I don't think it's an aesthetic thing. I think that makes total sense, and that's fair. And again, I would love to hear your comments and perspectives, because I did not expect it to turn into like the middle of this preview to just be about fouls. But to be honest, it makes total sense in the context of what we're about to see. In my opinion, there are going to be a lot of fouls called in this series. And unfortunately, if you're a Knicks fan, I think Karl-Anthony Towns is going to be at the heart of it. And I hope that I'm wrong, because I from just my personal from an aesthetic perspective, I wish that players got more than 6 fouls. I wish that there was at least like 7 fouls, because while I think that fouling and foul baiting and stuff like just is like part of the game, I don't want people to like not be able to play as a result of it. So like there's like a double problem of this guy's getting to the line and advantaging his team, and also the players that we want to see play are not even able to play because they're on the bench because they can't play. They're in foul trouble. So that's the bigger problem to me. But that's a problem I have with the NBA as far as like, I think rules should change around that. But I am really curious to see how the Knicks keep Karl-Anthony Towns out of foul troubles, if they're going to just try to run Embiid, Maxey pick and rolls, empty side pick and rolls. Let's say they go to the wing, empty out the other side. Are the Knicks going to bring help from the weak side aggressively? Like, how are they going to bring and deal with the pick and roll with 3 guys? How are they going to deal with that without getting to Karl-Anthony Towns in foul trouble, and without there being a layup line by Maxey getting to the rim all the time? So I have a maybe an out there perspective on what I would do if I was Mike Brown. I would put. I don't think putting OG on Embiid is out there. They've tried that before. We know that they're willing to go that. Where they put Towns might surprise some people, though, or where I think they should put. I think they should put him on Paul George, and here's why I think they should put him on Paul George. So for starters, as we all know, Paul George is everybody's favorite hooper's favorite hooper. That is the ethical. He is not trying to draw fouls. That guy is trying to go one-on-one. He's going in his bag. Coincidentally, what Paul George is trying to do is Karl-Anthony Towns' biggest strength as a defender, and nobody seems to know it. Like, Karl-Anthony Towns is a good one-on-one defender against certain types of players. The types of players he's not a good one-on-one defender, Tyrese Maxey, who is too fast for him and will dust him every single time that he gets a chance to. Towns will lose that matchup 8 times out of 10. But Paul George is more methodical. He likes using his body to create space. He doesn't have that first step that he had 10 years ago or whatever in Indiana. Even 2019 Paul George in Oklahoma City. He likes to go into his bag. He likes to use his handle. He likes to shoot over smaller defenders. Towns can stay in front of him, and he can do a good job of it, and he can stay out of foul trouble, and they can use him. Obviously, they can't use him as a roamer. Paul George is too good a shooter. But what I mean is Paul George isn't a Josh Hart type or a Derek White type who's going to go crashing in on the offensive glass, or even do the half measure thing that all the smart teams seem to do these days, where they run to the free throw line. Shout out to anyone who notices that every single smart team has a guy who runs to the free throw line on the offensive glass, because apparently some nerd found out that that's the most common place for an offensive rebound to go, is to land at the free throw line. So if you look closely, like, all the smart teams will have somebody, instead of crashing to the offensive glass, they'll run to the free throw line because that allows them to crash the glass and not get burned in transition. It's like a great half measure. Anyways, rant aside. Paul George is not an aggressive offensive rebounder. Towns is great at ending possessions. It's one of the most valuable things he does defensively. The Knicks get stops and you don't get the offensive rebound against them. Karl-Anthony Towns can guard Paul George in isolation. He can stay somewhat attached to him. You're not losing that much because he's not that great a rim protector, so it's not like pulling him from the paint is killing you. You put OG Anunoby, your actual best defender, in the primary action more. He has a better chance against Tyrese Maxey than Karl-Anthony Towns ever would. You're kind of getting the best out of everyone if you do this. And yeah, I just think it's what the Knicks should do, and I'm not sure they're going to.
I love this. This is incredible. I mean, you made such a strong case for it. I'm immediately on board, and I think it makes a ton of sense for all the reasons that you suggested. So, no chance Mike Brown does this, unfortunately. I would say nearly no chance, but I think.
Where do you think he goes?
Idea. I think when OG's on Embiid, I think Towns is going to spend a pretty hefty amount of time on Embiid, whereas I actually think he should probably spend almost no time on Embiid. Like, I think I'd be pretty extreme about it. I was thinking of him being more on Oubre for the most part, but like I think the Paul George option makes a lot of sense too. So
the thing I like about him on George instead of Oubre is it, to your point, moves Brunson. It gives Brunson multiple guys to toggle to. Brunson's the kind of guy that Paul George, even 36-year-old Paul George, that would be his ideal matchup. Like if Brunson ever got switched on to Paul George, he would love that, and that'd be great. That would be great for the Sixers because it's exactly the way Paul George is trying to play. I think it moves, another thing it does is it moves Brunson between VJ Edgecombe and Kelly Oubre, which I said before, I don't think there are really good matchups for Brunson, but I do think there are least bad matchups, and I think those are the two least bad matchups for Brunson. I think that Towns on George actually slides all the Knicks into their right places. You let McCall and Hart switch between Maxey. I would go with Hart. I think Hart was their best defender. I think Hart's better. I shouldn't say better. Slightly less bad at getting over screens than McCall, who's one of the worst in the league. And if McCall's on Maxey and he can't get over screens, that's death for the Knicks. Like that's how the Sixers will burn them. So you put Hart on Maxey. You have McCall on Edgecombe. And yeah, I think that is the Knicks' best possible defensive alignment.
I think it's a good case. So my idea with Towns on Oubre is that not that you're going to strictly ghost Kelly Oubre, you could, but not that you would do that, but just that it allows him to really shade more to help OG in these situations where Embiid is just going to post ups, and you can have him help from the weak side and be there at the rim for Maxey drives, because we know Maxey's going to still get to the rim, against any Knick defender in the starting lineup. So it's more about being able to have Towns have kind of like one eye on the rim at all times, basically. Like that's kind of, you're kind of stashing him on Oubre, but I could see argument for both, and I hope they try both, but they won't. They won't try both.
Here's a question for you, actually. What are the Knicks going to be prepared for that one set Nick Nurse loves, where the weak side guy gets a flare screen and somehow he's able to create 10 open threes a game every single time the Knicks play the Sixers, and there's never any prep done for it? It's like, oh my God, they're running this play again.
Yeah. So like, that's funny. There was that one game. It was just like, it was basically the exact scenario that the Hawks were in when the Knicks kept running the same flex action, weak side screening action, off ball screening action for OG and Brunson, where the Sixers just kept screening for the weak side 3-point shooter, and they just kept getting wide open three after wide open three. I assume that Brown is going to have a way to deal with that going into the series, and we see it not happen very much at all. I'm just going to hopefully assume that. I think we talked about most of the guys here. Before we wrap up, I mean, we got to talk about Deuce McBride, I think, because Deuce, I think in this previous Hawks series, as we talked about, Josh Hart was being guarded traditionally. If you guard Josh Hart traditionally, you turn him into an all-star level player. Like you're just saying, oh, you're going to have in your 2K rating for, everything that you do, like in terms of aggression, defense, and crashing the boards, transition, everything's going to be really high. Typically, your off-ball gravity is going to be low to offset some of that, but we're just going to crank your off-ball gravity up to like a 90. And it's like, okay, well, then I'm a superstar then, like good luck. Since we probably, I'm assuming, won't see that in this series, I think Deuce McBride wasn't super important to the Hawks series, but I think he's going to be critically important to this series, not just because of the spacing that he might be able to provide in lieu of Josh Hart, but also when we have Tyrese Maxey, who obviously everyone knows is one of the quickest players in the league, and the Knicks don't really have guys who can stay in front of him. I mean, we'll see what Jose Alvarado is able to do, but that being said, I think Deuce McBride is their best option for navigating screens, staying in front of Tyrese Maxey, and also being able to provide spacing. I think Deuce, this is a Deuce series. I think last series wasn't. I think this one is for him. And what do you think?
Yeah, this is one that really aligns with his strengths. I mean, this is actually the one they have him for because it's the one that requires screen navigation more than any with Tyrese Maxey. They are going to need him on Maxey. I'm trying to figure out the best way to say this without it coming off too extreme or too polarizing. And partially because I don't think it's going to come to this. I actually think I was going to make a joke about if I was a gambling man, I would tell our audience to bet on Josh Hart overs. I actually think Hart's going to have a huge series. He just seems to love, first of all, not just playing Philly, but like because Philly tries to ignore him. I do think that there are times when he gets passive and times when he gets in his head about not shooting, but then there are times where he takes it personally. And I think that Embiid's style of ghosting him actually correlates more with how he likes to play because I don't think it forces him to shoot as much because he can get to the rim. Like, again, this goes back to my belief that they're ghosting Hart, maybe not because they think I think they like the strategy, but I think they just don't want Embiid to have to move as much. So I think it's unintentionally, it's giving Hart pathways to the paint and to the rim that he likes and he can capitalize on. But what I want to say is throughout this season, we've seen pretty much every Knick except for Jalen Brunson and OG Anunoby have struggles. Oh, well, excuse me. Jalen Brunson and OG Anunoby have had struggles as well. But they're the two I would say, maybe you disagree with this, but they're the two I would say for the Knicks who Mike Brown, no matter what, has been like, you're out there. You're like, you can play through whatever. We saw that Rocket. I forget which game it was. Oh, the Knicks played the Rockets, had that huge comeback. They went to the all shooting lineup then. They had a couple games where Karl-Anthony Towns wasn't closing. They chose to close with Mitch because Towns just didn't have it that night. Everybody knows about what Mikal was going through round one, and Mike Brown was very, very quick to say, all right, like, I guess maybe this isn't your series, and we're going to try to look in other directions. If the 76ers are ghosting effectively and it's having adverse effects on the rest of the offense, this is actually a franchise-defining series for the Knicks and the Knicks organization. Because as good as Josh Hart is, as good as Josh Hart can be, you can't say, oh, well, there are certain times when Mikal Bridges, who he gave up 5 first-round picks for, or there are even certain times where Karl-Anthony Towns, it's just not your matchup, and it's just not your game. You can't look those guys in the eye and say that and expect them to buy in, and then say, as everybody's watching, well, yeah, we see them ignoring Josh Hart, and we see that Jalen Brunson's getting doubled, and we see the offense is bogged down. We're just going to have to figure it out. Good luck. You can't lose a series that way. If you lose a series that way, then you go into this summer, you have to completely overhaul the outlook, the whole build of your team, because you have fundamentally decided that certain things are what you're trying to cater your team build and your strategies to. And that's just not this team. That is not this team build. Again, I don't think it's going to come to this, but I do think the Knicks are going to be put to the test in terms of how do you respond to this extreme ghost coverage? And if it's effective versus you, if the 76ers do it really well, do you have it in you to say, all right, we have a versatile roster. We have other buttons we can press. I'm going to push one of those buttons. And Deuce McBride would be that button because he brings a lot of the good things that Hart brings, and he adds things that therefore that would in turn counter how the 76ers are trying to exploit you.
Yeah, it's a great case, and I think it's a perfect way to end the show because this is going to be maybe regime defining for the Knicks front office. Definitely Mike Brown's early tenure defining from the standpoint of what Josh Hart provides, what Jalen Brunson provides, what this team's going to look like moving forward for the Knicks. And for the Sixers, I mean, I think it's a bit of house money almost in a way because they're coming in as the clear underdogs. They have an Embiid who's still, battling back from a variety of injuries and knickknacks and bruises and appendicitis and everything. And, Maxi's still young and still going to be getting better as they move forward. So this is sort of a transition phase for them. I don't think they're expected to win a title this season. So it's a bit of a house money situation for them, in my opinion. People could disagree with me, but that's kind of how I see it. So I do think there is so much at stake for the Knicks, and it's a great way to summarize it. If you made it this far, I really hope that you subscribe and you've made it through, a rant that you hated, I'm sure, that I gave about fouling and sprinkled in with that, I hopefully very good and to great analysis about this matchup moving forward. But if you made it this far, I definitely hope you subscribe, and we would love to hear your comments and your thoughts because we will respond to every single comment that we get, whether you agree, disagree, hate what we said, love what we said. We definitely appreciate all of the people who are thinking, the game in a deep way and have insights that they can share and that we can learn from as we kind of continue to grow and build this platform. So really appreciate you all joining. Geoff, any last words before we get out of here?
Yeah, I just want to share extra appreciation to the people who saw my headphones turning into a stethoscope and put up with it because I kept looking at myself and hating the stethoscope thing. It was driving me nuts. So if you made it this far, you can comment stethoscope and make fun of me because, oh my God, I need to get new headphones.
I love the comment of stethoscope, especially because of the variety of ways that we'll see people spell it as they comment that in the comments. So put your best spelling of stethoscope, if I could even say it. Appreciate you guys. We will be back with more series analysis of this series, previews of other series. It's going to be a blast. We're going to be here all playoffs long. So can't wait to see you. And until then, for Geoff, I'm XJ, and this has been Hot Hand Theory.